this is like probably not the fourth take, but actually now the fifth. But whatever. I had a plan, and like always, my plans fall through. And this one actually isn't that big of a deal. I'm not like crying about it, but I do find it funny that I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Because I spent, so I guess to give like some backstory, that's the word, some backstory. I finished this book like 2 weeks ago, right? And at the start of the month, literally like May 6th, this movie, the adaptation came out. So I had a freaking rush and finish this book. And I'm a slow reader. I take forever because I have to sit there and chat with myself about everything in the book, okay? The guy does the wrong thing. I'm talking to myself about it. The girl does the right thing. I'm talking to myself about it. You know, they fall in love. I'm talking to myself about it, okay? So I'm talking to myself about this book. I also read this at work exclusively. Like, I have a workbook that I read because there's times where it's slow, and then there's times where it's not. And in the slow moments, I end up reading. Like, I have a new book right now that I haven't really picked up because I kind of got in trouble a little bit a week ago, so now I'm trying to be good and not do the wrong things, even though I have been there for like 5 years, so I technically have leeway. So I'm slow because I read this and in like limited quantities. You know, I'm not constantly reading it. Shocker. But this was a good book. I actually really enjoyed this book. I didn't cry at the end, but I was emotional with Marcellus going back into the ocean. That made me a little like, I have emotions. Ooh. So I was emotional. But it took me a while because after I finished the book, I was trying to like figure out, because in my head I was like, what, you know, would be a cool idea is if I read the book and then I watched the movie and I talked about them. That'd be so cool. Or like I just talked about the book because all I do is movies. But it's I'm not really good at the whole like understanding books part, you know, like comprehending what I'm reading. And I don't mean it in the sense of like, oh, I don't know what I just read, because I know what I just read. Like, I read it slow enough that I, like, fully understand what I'm reading. But if you were to ask me what the theme of the book is, I wouldn't be able to tell you, because my brain just can't come up with it the same way. I don't know. It was always something that I had a problem with. So, I've spent, like, 2 weeks trying to come up with a theme, and all that I got was, like, death. Death was the theme, like, or maybe not just death, but like loss, grief, like those were the resounding themes of the book, which totally could be it, you know. I fully believe interpretation, just like art, is also possible for books. However, I usually get it wrong, so I just kind of don't usually give out my interpretations. That being said, my first take, I talked about this book exclusively. Second take and third take as well. And then my third take, I was like, this is perfect. I babbled on about it. I can watch the movie now. So I sat down, I had a glass of wine, and my little charcuterie board that I made myself because I wanted to feel cool. And I watched the movie, and I was bummed. I was bummed, and I was frustrated, and it's not bad. Like, I can't sit here and be like, oh, the movie sucked. Oh, I didn't like the movie. I liked the movie, you know? It just wasn't the book. And I understand. It's an adaptation, I get it. Whatever. But I'm just saying is I was severely bummed out by the movie. And it wasn't the actors' fault, because the actors did a great job. Okay, it wasn't their fault. But it was kind of just like not the same. There was a lot of differences between the two. And I was told that it was more of a faithful adaptation, but I wouldn't consider it that faithful because all that it really did was it didn't even follow the storyline correctly. Like, we'll get into that in a minute. But, So it's taking me a while to figure it out. When I watched the movie, I that was a week ago, and since then I've kind of just been thinking about it because I didn't want to be like, boo, this film sucks, boo, because nobody likes that. So I didn't want to be like, oh, this sucked, it was a horrible. So I've just been sitting with it and trying to think of like things that I did like, things that I didn't like, and here it is. Here is hopefully the last time that I have to film something for this. So, without further ado, here is my opinions on Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt, which was later adapted into a movie. This should be interesting, I think. Or not, I don't know. If you don't find it interesting, that's okay too, I guess. But you just stay until the end, because if you don't, what are you doing here? That's rude. That's rude. So I babbled initially about the book. Like, I literally spent 40 minutes trying to come up with things to talk about the book. The book's good. I love the book. The book was a wild ride, especially halfway through. And I'm so sorry, but there will be spoilers because the movie's been out for a month. This book has been out for a few years. It kind of, like if you were interested in it, that'd be... I feel like it's not that much of a problem to spoil the book a movie because it's been out for a decent chunk of time. Okay, hate me for it later. So I liked the book. The book was fine. The book was good. It was really compelling. I thought it was a good read. Halfway through, I got really invested when we found out that, like, because Marcella says something of like, oh, they have like the same disposition or whatever. Something similar to that, like he was just commenting on the fact that both Tova and Cameron were similar. And since then I was hooked because I was like, I have to figure out how this ends. And also because Tova's a very strong, independent woman who basically, like, gives up on herself, even though it's, like, not necessary. And so I was really hoping that she wasn't about to commit to something as crazy as she was. She didn't. She didn't. Yes, she didn't. When I found out, I was at work, and I was screaming, and I felt so bad for my customers. Because I was like, you guys do not know what juiciness just came out of this thing. Also, for this being her first book, such a good read. Honestly, it's like one of the best things I've seen. Holy crap, dude. This one is up there. Okay, and I don't know if it's because it's about a nonconformist narrator or whatever, or if it's just an out of the norm narrator. But it was such a good read. Oh, man. This movie, so crazy. Okay, so the book, good, right? Movie, not really. I can't say that it's like, oh, such a terrible movie. I know I keep bringing out that voice whenever talking bad about anything, but it's part of me, man. I can't help it. But there was a lot of, like, noticeable changes that I was like, especially after being told that it was very, very faithful to the book, and then seeing all the, like, minuscule changes that were like, oh, that's actually kind of part of okay, they're gone, that's gone, okay. And I'll get into that, because I think that it's part of the story. The story changes was just crazy, Also, so funny. You can tell they filmed in the winter, like between the months of January, or not January, from December to February, because every time they were outside, they would, like, breathe and talk, and then there would just be this puff of, like, whatever, a mist of warm, hot air coming out of these human bodies. And, of course, it's set in the summer. So it was just funny to me, like, watching it and going, oh yeah, they really filmed in the winter. This this movie was still very well done, like, don't get me wrong. The cast did a really good job. I think it was very well edited. I was bummed. It is only an hour and 53 minutes, so it's not very long. And the book is like 315 pages. First off, the big bummer was the fact that it literally wasn't that long. Like, I think I blinked and I was already 45 minutes in, and I was like, Jesus, like, that's fast. Another problem that I had was a lot of the characters were portrayed, I think, differently than how I envisioned them in the story, which that itself, you know what, that I knew going in. I wasn't going to, like, see the same characters, because it's like, you know, like, we interpret things differently when reading them. And, you know, these actors were given a script and they interpreted from that script these characters. I don't know if any of them read the book. I don't know if any of them really wanted to read the book. But I do know is, like, the script that they were given, they decided to go a certain way with, and everything worked out. So, while I think that the characters themselves, like, that was, you know, more me, I do think it goes hand in hand, because they're kind of dependent on each other. Like, these characters are coming in from the story, and they're supposed to be, like, seen a different way. And if the story is also different, then so are the characters, because they've had different, like, experiences. So, there's that. And then, I don't know how else to say it without, like, going into the actual story, which I can do. I don't mind doing that. That's not a problem to me. I love to talk about it. I think though this book is entirely different from the movie, and so the stories are going to be completely different. You know, there's 30 minutes of content right there of me explaining out the fucking book and story. Or movie. Sorry, it's been a long day. But I don't frankly want to do that. But I also don't know if I want to sit here and do, like, a list and run through each individual changes. Because I think after a certain point, I was writing down stuff, and then I just stopped. Because I was like, there's too many changes, like, I do not care that much. But the fact that there's this many that I have to stop myself from writing this down is crazy. I did like that there was a abundance of content for the nitwits. I thought that was kind of cool, because there's a little bit here and there. I also really liked Marcellus. I think Marcellus was the most fun octopus I've ever seen. Pretty cool. But also I just, like, literally I have nothing to complain about when it comes to Marcellus. He was funny. His actor was so good. He did a great job. Marcellus is orange. You know, I like Marcellus. He's, like, the one thing in both the book and the movie that I'm like, he's perfect. You're great. Humor was great when it comes to him. He was a great companion. One of the major parts of the story is Tova going to a retirement home, or to old folks facility, whatever the hell you want to call it. Because she basically has convinced herself that she has to, right? That she has no other options. She has no family because her husband passed away a few years prior from cancer. Her son passed away when he was 18 under mysterious circumstances down at the wharf. And her brother just passed away in his own retirement home facility. So she's basically convinced herself that, like, she's got no family to take care of her if something bad were to happen. And then something bad does happen. She's cleaning one night and she breaks her leg. And then suddenly now she's off on her foot, or she can't be on her foot for 6 weeks. So she's kind of, like, at that point convinced herself. And I think, frankly, in her opinion, her entire world was just falling down. And not falling down, was just, like, destroyed. Her entire world was just collapsing around her. It had been for a while, and she finally had the final push of breaking her leg to say fuck it. So she applies to the retirement home facility and essentially that starts like the whole problem of like she's set to go at the end of the summer away. So she has to sell her house, sell her things, quit her job, go, right? And people are finding out about this very later or very late in the process, and eventually she does decide to not go through with it, but for a while there it's very clear that nothing's going to deter her. You know, she's a very strong woman. She's very committed to some of her morals, and it shows when she tries to continuously keep going to the same stupid retirement home. And it's almost like similar enough in the movie for me to not be having like a problem with it, except in the movie her late husband had signed them up for the retirement home before he passed away, which first off is crazy because nowhere does it ever seem like Tova would do good in a situation like that. Like, if when you read her character and as you go on with the story, she kind of comes off very autistic, at least like autism coded, if that has any semblance of a word. I'm sure in 20 years it won't mean shit. But she's very autism coded. Things need to be done a certain way, in a certain order, and if you don't do them in that way, you know, it's wrong. It's wrong. There's nothing about it's wrong. So she's very specific. She's particular about some of the stuff that, you know, she does, and she would not do well in a retirement home at all. Like, she's also very much like very lonely, or like she loves her solitude. She loves being alone. And it's just why, you know? That part was confusing. There was also no mention of a sibling at all passing away. Like, none whatsoever, which is crazy because her brother literally dies in the beginning of the story, and it is one of the compelling parts that pushes her towards this act. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So, there's no brother, alright? Her son does die when he is just at 18, just over or under, like, around. Except he wasn't out working that night. Instead, he was boating. I don't even understand why, but apparently his thing was he would go down in the middle of the night and take himself out on one of the boats. I guess. I don't know. But none of it made sense to me in a way where it was like, oh yeah, that's the same story. Because, like, this obviously will then alter the character of Tova, because Tova's had different experiences in life, so she's not gonna, you know, react the same way. So that's different. And then Cameron's entire thing is different too. Because in the book, Cameron starts out very, like, how do you say, he self-sabotages a lot. And he likes to blame all of his problems on other people, which is not what you, as a functioning adult, should be doing, because your problems are not other people's. So they don't owe you anything, and that's kind of usually how it goes. But Cameron gets fired from his job, and then his girlfriend breaks up with him because he got fired from his job again. So then he moves in with his friends for a couple of days while he's couch surfing, trying to figure shit out. And they tell him that their band's breaking up because they're trying to have a kid, which is very important to them. And since they've been lifelong friends for forever, what is Cameron going to do except say, hell yeah, like, that's okay. Even if he doesn't like that and he would prefer moth sausage, a terrible name really, to be more, you know, he wants to do more with that, but what can he do? And he's at his aunt, who basically raised him since he was like 5, because his mom was a user and she walked out on him, left him with his aunt, but also left his aunt with a bunch of her shit. And while going through a box of her stuff, he finds a photo and a ring. The ring presumably belongs to his father, but the photo has his mother and what he assumes is his father in it. And so he starts doing some digging, and he finds out that his supposed father is this realtor in Seattle, or Sawwell Bay, but Sawwell Bay is fictional, so I'm just going to say Seattle, because that's the most I remember. So his dad is a realtor out in Seattle, and he decides that he is owed 18 years of child support and alimony, so he's going to go get that. And because of that, he books a shitty knockoff Spirit airline flight and leaves that same day. He takes some of his shit with him, and the rest he just pawns and throws out. Except when he lands, turns out that the photo got lost because it was sitting in his luggage, so he only has the ring. And because now he's sitting in an airport, kind of just waiting because he didn't really think it through, he's now without a house, without a job. He took a loan from his aunt, so now he also owes her money. But then he meets a stranger who offers them a interesting version of a sandwich, but it's vegan. So I say interesting because of how it's described in the book. It doesn't sound very appealing, but that's just me. Okay, that's just me. So he's offered a sandwich, and the stranger then is talking about, things to do in Seattle, and then are you still in need of a car? Because a buddy of mine's selling a van for $5,000, and, Cameron's like, I'll give $2,000 if they can. And now by the end of the day, he has a freaking van, and he's off to Sawwell Bay, or Seattle, right? And, that's kind of how he gets into Sawwell Bay. I mean, there's, more stuff, he shows up, the thing freaking dies on him in the parking lot of a Shopway. Ethan Mack, who is the owner, comes out, helps the guy out, takes him down to the auto repair shop to see what they can do. Cameron's in need of a job. Ethan Mack helps Cameron by, instead of offering him a position at Shopway because, it's a small town, there's not a lot of availability, instead they come up with fake references for a job at the aquarium. So, Cameron has a lot going on, right? In the movie, it's so different. First off, his mom's apparently dead. We don't have any confirmation like that in the book, so that was kind of jarring. She leaves to him her van that she lived in, and he just takes it over, goes through her stuff, cleans it out and shit, and, fine, that totally works, but that's still different from what happens in the book. His aunt isn't even in the movie at all. There's no connection to an aunt at all. Any mention is brief and barely. He never ends up living at his friend's. There's no mention of an ex-girlfriend, which is part of the problem later on. His friends basically blame him, and say that they can't do it anymore. Not because they don't want a kid, or because they do want a kid, but just because he's the problem and they don't want to be in a band with him anymore. No mention of them being lifelong friends. He just packs up and goes to, well, I guess he gets the photo and the ring, and then he goes to Sawwell Bay. But it's still different circumstances. Which is entirely just, it was just wrong watching it, I guess. That's all. There were so many differences that it was just frustrating to watch. That being said, it's still a good movie. I would highly recommend it, but it's just man, they did the story so wrong. And we start out already a bit of ways in from the book. Like, the points of which the book and the movie start out are completely different. Because the movie is basically, like, a quarter or so of the way in. Whereas the book is obviously longer. It's just... If you go in expecting them to be the same, they're not the same. That's all. But Marcellus was amazing. I love him. I didn't cry with Marcellus because I don't know. I didn't. But I did find that it was almost beautiful for there being like a full circle kind of moment there where Marcellus was born in the ocean and then he got rescued, and which I do find maybe not fascinating, but I do find it interesting. The movie gives us more of an idea of what happened to get him rescued, whereas the book doesn't really paint that clear of a picture, which fine by me. I don't really care. But I do like how it he starts in the ocean, he's rescued, but then he does eventually go back to the ocean, kind of just like surviving and living the life of an octopus, because an octopus would live and die in the ocean, and Marcellus was born and died in the ocean. Anyways, I thought it was cute. I didn't cry, but I definitely did feel emotions. I don't think I was as connected to the relationship of Tova and Marcellus in the movie than I was with the book. And I don't know if it's because, I was already focusing on everything else that was wrong, and that's what happened. Or if it's because I visualized it differently. I don't know. But I did like that they had a better relationship in the movie. Though it did move faster. It was very fast-paced for a movie. I mentioned it was an hour and 53 minutes. A lot of that was, it was so quick. I don't even know what happened for half of it. There was there was the relationship between Tova and Ethan. Ethan Mack is the local Shopway owner, as well as the local babbler and gossiper. He loves to gossip. I love that man so much. He's so funny. His backstory is really cool. He was a Scottish immigrant that came over for a girl, but then that didn't end up working out, so then he went west, and he found himself in Washington, and then he found himself at Sowell Bay, where he was working on the docks, and then when he retired, he was bored, because of course he was, so then he bought a Shopway, and then from there, he kind of just picked up working at the Shopway and whatnot, and it's nice, it's cute, I love him, he's funny, but, so he's had, the fattest crush on Tova for a long time. And we love that. He's basically pining, and she's like, no, I can't. Not after my husband. And it's great. It's good. But there's a couple of moments where he's really trying to, get in with her. At least on, a basic level of just, friendship. Because, he views it differently than she does, I guess. He invites her for tea. Or over for, dinner, and nowhere do they ever really, have, a whole date thing. She does go, oh, yeah, it's not really a date, and he agrees. So, they have, this little dinner date, and there's a reason for it, but that's spoilers, and I won't do that, even if I want to. And he wanders off because something's happened, and he's not in the room. Tova, out of goodwill, decides to clean up his home. And she makes the biggest mistake by not checking with him for something. So she grabs, a t-shirt, but she doesn't realize it. She thinks it's a rag, because people turn their t-shirts into rags, which is smart. Anyways, she thinks that it's, a rag, so she starts cleaning things up with it. Turns out it's a very old, priceless t-shirt for Ethan. And what does she do? This lady that only has a flip phone, not even an email to her name, goes and uses a friend to go onto an eBay website and buys a brand new t-shirt for $2,000 drives up to the meeting point herself, which is rare because she's not a big fan of driving on the highway or the freeway. She goes there herself and back, and she gives him a $2,000 t-shirt, and she still continues to go, no, I can't. My ex-husband and I were married. Girl, if you do not marry this man, if you do not wife him up, I swear to God. So just the differences, okay? Because in the movie, none of that happens. We don't see any of that. In the movie, what we get is a weird tea date where she spills her fucking alcohol on him. And then somehow towards the end comes up with the t-shirt. We don't get anything else. Nothing else. I need you to understand how important this is to me. We don't get anything else. I have been rooting for these two since the book began, and we get nothing. Nothing. Virtually nothing. So, the book is amazing. The book is fantastic. The movie is mid-tiered. And I'm still gonna watch it again. Because maybe I'll fucking love it this time. But I don't know. It's just, I thought it was gonna be different than what it was. I was wrong. Can't believe that that's the case. And I think that's it. Because I can't really come up with much else right now. So, it'll be funny if I pop back in later with a, hey, here's what I missed. But, yeah. Oh, before I go, and before you leave, wait. In case you were curious of what the new book is, it is Mortal Instruments, The City of Bones, by Cassandra Clare. Yes, got it right. Because, low-key, I'm considering doing something with the Shadowhunters series. More so the movie, because frankly, doing 3 seasons compared to 1 book is crazy. It's crazy. So, keep an eye out for that. Also, super fun projects, because I mentioned my crochet stuff. Guess now what you get to see every time? All the crochet stuff that I'm working on. Okay, so Whoa. Okay, so I've got these. And they open in. And they're little wind spinners. They're not the best. I don't know what's wrong with it. I don't know if it's my tension. I haven't tried them yet in the wind. But they're supposed to twirl like a cool little wind spinner. So, there's that. Which I think is pretty neato. And, yeah, okay. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you for hearing me out about this book and the movie, because frankly, it's been driving me crazy, and although I've already ranted to one person, I figured I should spare everybody else and just rant in general. Watch the movie if you can. Read the book if possible. This is where supporting your local library comes through. And, yeah, love yourself. See you later. Bye-bye.